Hi everybody, I'm Dana Litwin again, and welcome back to Tuesday Tips for Leaders of Volunteers. Enjoy. So what type of event are you creating? Are you producing? And think about how much has to be live and how much can be pre-recorded. In general, it's going to be a lot easier to create something that has mainly pre-recorded elements. So some categories you can think about is any kind of training. Volunteer training doesn't have to go out broadcast live. It can be pre-recorded and you can use that content over and over again, have it on your website, put it on social media, have it on an intranet available just to your volunteers through your volunteer management software login or a portal. Some people use that, and some people use something like a Facebook group or some other online forum to help inform their volunteers of updates and things like that, or put it in an email, put a YouTube link that's set to private or link only, and do it that way. But using this content that's pre-recorded, you can also edit it into other little useful pieces to share on social media, or just use as promo for the agency, or to shout out and celebrate some of your wonderful volunteers and donors and other community advocates and supporters that are working with your agency. So sometimes we do want to do something that feels live. It generally is a little more engaging to have something live, whether that's for a conference presentation or a certain kind of interactive training where you really want to have some very robust question and answer sessions, or a nice volunteer recognition event where some parts are pre-recorded, like somebody at the Oscars or the Emmys accepting their award from their remote location. Use that trick that the big kids do, that the big productions do. It's the same basic concept. As much as possible can be pre-recorded and then worked into with a little outline and a script of cues of where that happens and where you go to, say, a live special guest host or however you want to format your event. It's also worth mentioning that how we did things for in-person volunteer recognition events is pretty different for when we're pivoting to online or virtual productions, but it's the same basic elements. You have a production plan, you have a timeline, you know who is doing which task or thing in the process and during the show. And we'll go into our next section right now and talk about what does that look like? What does that production plan look like? So here we go. Production and scope planning, writing the script, the outline, it can take anywhere from a few hours. If someone's used to doing this, they already have these skills exist within your paid staff and volunteer talent pool, or it can take a few weeks to really iron out all the details depending on how complicated of a virtual or online event you're trying to do. If you're doing a one-off awards ceremony or recognition event for volunteers, that might be a little more complicated, but again, the more you have pre-recorded material from some award recipients, that's easier to kind of weave in than worry about, what happens if something goes wrong live on the air. Or you might be setting up to create a training series or a series of fun social media features or little promos for the agency featuring your volunteers and your donors and your other advocates and supporters in the community. Whatever it is, there's a lot of people who know how to do this, and a lot of them have free time in the pandemic. So many friends of mine are in live event and television and film production, and they don't have enough to do right now. So whether you want to find a paid professional crew at a really good rate or a partial pro bono donation rate, that's not hard to do right now in early 2021 when production is shut down. But you might have all of this in-house. It doesn't have to be that complicated. It doesn't have to be a giant Hollywood production. And if you're doing an ongoing series or e-learning, just, find a script and a production plan and an outline and create something that's just going to be really consistent and pretty easy to replicate. Once you create some of this content, you can keep using it in big and little pieces. The real magic of all of this is editing. Now for editing, whether you have a highly skilled volunteer doing it or there's someone in-house in your agency who already has that skill, if you're assigning volunteers or award recipients to do this at home, great. Have them just record something with pretty decent light and pretty decent sound. That's a segment that you can work into what you're creating. If you have a lot of material that's pre-recorded that you want to edit, or you're creating a series, or you're creating e-learning or some other kind of training series, absolutely hire a pro. It's worth it. There's a lot of very, very talented video editors, producers, even directors, and cinematographers that don't have enough work right now. So let's give those fine, talented people some of the work that we have. Most smartphones or desktop or tablet operating systems these days have iMovie or QuickTime or Adobe or Windows Media. There's usually something that has an editing function and maybe some basic effects and titles included in the technology that you probably already have, or some of your volunteers already have, that can contribute this skill. If you're interested in learning more about editing, a great free program that I love to use and a lot of my friends love to use is called DaVinci. It has almost pro level functions, and if you're working with a pro bono volunteer, highly skilled editor, they will absolutely have all the right software to do it themselves. You won't have to worry about that in your budget. But if you want to invest in something like that, typically the standards are Final Cut Pro or Adobe or Avid tend to be the professional standards these days for editing software.